There we go. A big welcome to you all from sunny London. My name is Charlotte Burton. I'm the marketing manager for the School of Law here at Queen Mary. You may have met me on other webinars that we host here at Queen Mary before. And today you've got a session very specifically about our programme of Art, Business and Law, which my colleagues will talk about in just a moment. Before we start, just to say, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A or the chat function that we have here available to us on Zoom. We will keep an eye on this as we go along. We're in quite an open conversation, aren't we? So we're quite happy to take questions as we go along, or there'll be questions at the end. So feel free to ask away if there's anything you want to have answered. This is quite a relaxed, informal session. So you feel free to just have a chat with us about anything that comes to mind. This session is being recorded, so please don't worry if you don't quite catch something, we will share it afterwards so you've got access to it as well. Okay, so Debbie, should I pass over to you to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Charlotte. Hi, everybody. I'm really sorry that just the way that this webinar is formatted, that I only see Charlotte and I see Alex, and it's lovely to see you both. I'm really sorry that I cannot see everyone in the gallery view. I'm Debbie Girolamo. I am the director of the Art, Business and Law program for the Center for Commercial Law Studies at Queen Mary. We run the program with our partner, the Institute of Art and Law. Alex Herman, who is with us today, is the director of the program for the Institute of Art and Law, and he is the director of the Institute of Art and Law, and it's great that Alex is here with us today. So just what I intend to do, hopefully briefly, and not to lose you, I want to introduce you to our program. It's such a great program. We all love it, and nice to also be able to say with confidence that our current students love it, and we've heard from our former students who really enjoyed the program as well. So I want to talk to you about that. Alex and I both want to talk to you about the program, what it offers, just to give you a sense of what you would be experiencing if you come into our program. So just a little brief word about us. So CCLS, Center for Commercial Law Studies, is renowned for its expertise in the area of commercial, finance and transactional law, intellectual property, governance, and dispute resolution. While the Institute of Art and Law is respected in the field for its knowledge, educational and executive programs focus specifically on laws that relates to cultural property and cultural heritage. It has preeminent place in the field and has a wealth of connection to many of the field's various actors, such as museums, galleries, auction houses, art law firms. Alex, would you like to say a bit more about the Institute and maybe how we came to be working together? Two Canadians, by the way.
Yeah, you're stuck with two Canadians. And from what I see in the chat, we have even more. So it's a slow takeover, it looks like.
Yeah. Way to
go. Yeah. So I'm the director of the Institute, as Debbie said. And I was originally a lawyer in Montreal, and I had the good fortune of working for Norman Palmer, who was a great eminent figure in the art law world. He was a professor, but he was also a practicing barrister, and he worked on a number of really interesting art law cases. So I was really lucky to work for him. And it was while I was working for him that the IAL and CCLS partnered to put together a program that didn't exist at the time. So this was about 2015, 2016. And eventually the program launched in 2017, which means we're now entering the 8th year of Art, Business and Law, the LLM, which is really a unique program. It's, as Debbie said, a wonderful partnership between our two entities, where you get the academic excellence from the likes of Debbie DiGirolamo and others at CCLS. And then you also get the, I would say, more practical side that we bring, because we have contacts with the museum sector, with the art business, and so on. So it's a really nice balance between those two sides of the same coin when it comes to the art world. We're always pleased to be working with the excellent people of CCLS. And this is going to be another opportunity to meet a great cohort of students from around the world. And as Debbie said, we bring people in from all over, and they really connect well because they have a deep love of the art world and a deep understanding of the law. And that is, in a sense, the marriage that brings the two sides to this together. So I think that's probably what I'll say, just as by way of introduction. And Debbie's going to tell you more about how the course runs today and what it offers to students like yourselves.
Great. Thank you very much, Alex. I just, before going into it, I just wanted to really stress how international our program is. We have students from all over the world, and they form an incredible bond over the 12 months that they're together. And, you know, we are also working on continuing our alumni contacts, so that there's continual networking even once they leave the program. But a little bit more about that in a minute. So the ABL program, that's Art, Business, and Law program, brings together all this expertise that Alex and I have been just mentioning now to provide what we see as a holistic approach to the study of law, business issues, cultural heritage, cultural property. It capitalizes on the great interest in and the symbiotic relationship between art in its expansive definition of cultural property, cultural heritage, the affairs of business, and the implications of law. And it's such an exciting time to be studying law in relation to the arts. You just need to take a look at the newspapers every day that there's something about art fraud or and some other type of art crime. Demands for restitution, the Ben and Bronzes at the British Museum, the Magdala collection in the V&A, the ever-present Parthenon marbles. You know, you read in the press about Liverpool losing its status as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So, you know, there are issues of, you know, how do you protect cultural heritage sites? Issues of copyright, which arise in the art world, infringement claims, plagiarism claims. There are issues dealing with the regulation of trade and commerce within the art world. We hear about the destruction of cultural heritage sites as a result of armed conflict. So there's so much going on, just a vastness of issues. So in terms of details of the program itself, so the Art, Business, and Law program, you might see it as a downside. We hope you don't, because we took a lot of time in designing the program, and we're thinking very hard about what is, you know, what you should be covering over the 12 months. So as a result, there are compulsory modules. There are 6 compulsory modules and a dissertation component to meet for the requirements of the degree. Now, the modules that are taught are art transactions, art and governance, art and cultural values, art and intellectual property, art and money, and art disputes and their resolution. So, you know, there's issues regarding contracts, issues regarding regulations. Obviously, in intellectual property, they have the whole gamut, trademarks, you know, to the extent patents might, you know, work into it, copyright. Art and money, talking about the financial aspects, and of course, art disputes, how do we deal with these claims that are made, whether they're authenticity claims, whether they're restitution claims, because there's a lot of claims that are not only dealing with restitution, which, you know, is the kind of the media baby right now. We have a full complement of lecturers, not only from CCLS and IAL, but also guest lecturers with specific expertise in various topics relating to cultural property, usually practitioners such as barristers, arbitrators, mediators, adjudicators, visiting lecturers from other universities. Students leave the program having participated in the, you know, a diversity of modules. And they go on to work in auction houses, they do further postgraduate work in the field. They go to private practice, whether it is in a art law-based practice or general practice, but with a focus on art law or wanting to develop that. Some have obtained internships at various art law firms, art law register, art loss register. So there's, you know, many keep, many develop a career in the field. But the course is not only about these modules. We introduced a formal co-curricular program to complement the compulsory modules. And the intention of the co-curricular program is to offer students an opportunity to hear from professionals in the field about their work, usually in situ. So to give you a flavor of the co-curricular program, you know, we've gone to auction houses to hear about business and legal issues that they face. We've gone to museums to talk about copyright management. We've had a panel of associates from art law firms talking about their careers in the past. This year we had a panel of tax experts on art law matters. A number of our students are very interested in that aspect. We have provenance experts and general counsel from one of our large national museums. We've heard from general counsel from a large private gallery. We've run a mediation workshop in the past. In addition, there are ad hoc extracurricular events which are offered to students. For example, one year students were invited by the law firm of Boodle Hatfield, a great supporter, strong supporter of our art law program, and for which we're thankful. But a couple of years ago, they invited our students to attend a street art event that the firm was hosting. We've offered, you know, tickets to the British art fairs in another year. There have been invitations to IAL conferences. Student representatives also have an opportunity to organize events with some financial support. And so what happens is that student representatives are appointed for the cohort every year, and it's up to them. Usually there are two that work together, and it's up to them to create events for their colleagues. We also have a mentor program for our ABL students who are partnered with art law lawyers as their mentors. Now, this is part of the CCLS mentoring program, but it's specifically tailored for our ABL students. Students have been applying since it's been running 3 years, I think. They've all been mentored. We've received excellent feedback from both students and mentors, and one student was even offered an employment position at the conclusion with the mentors law firm. So we're always trying to add to our complement of mentors, but that's available. We've been offering a work placement with Boodle Hatfield since 2021, and we just finished this year's placement. And I've heard from a few students that they really enjoyed it. And certainly I've heard from Boodle Hatfield how much they've enjoyed having our students. This year, 2 of our alumni are creating an ABL alumni group and organizing an alumni event for the fall. So we have about 80 alumni now. It's a great ABL network. There are also work opportunities as a student ambassador for the program. This year, Charlotte had the great idea of creating student ambassadors. And so one of our students is a student ambassador. There's also a possibility for conducting research to help our faculty. You know, that depends on faculty. Some of us use our research allowance to hire research assistants. I'm one of those, and I've had ABL students, you know, help me with some research in the last couple of years. So that's a possibility. Can't guarantee it, but it's kind of ad hoc. We've introduced an artist talk series curated by one of our former students, Mary Reinbold, an art critic and art law consultant. And we bring in artists or other or curators who talk about different, looking at art a little differently. We spoke about sustainability this year. Our first, Ben Kinmont, a California conceptual artist, pushed the boundaries of our perception of law and its relationship with law. Pushing our perception of art beyond boundaries and its relationship to law by looking at contracts as an art form. So the year is what you will make of it. For example, 2 of our current students submitted their papers for our art and cultural values module, which is a requirement for that module, to a conference in Florence. They were accepted. They traveled to Florence and delivered their paper, right? Another group of students decided on their own to go to the Isle of Wight in preparation for a group presentation that they were going to be presenting to one of our modules. So it's what you make of it, and usually everybody is pretty excited. That's it from me. Alex, did I miss anything? Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, it's hard to add anything to that, Debbie. That was so comprehensive and interesting. I'd like to sign up for this program next year. There is a lot to offer. It's a busy year. So I think the students they don't get bored. There are a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of chances. One of the good things is that this program is based at CCLS, which is in the heart of legal London. So you have so much at your fingertips. There will be events inevitably. As Debbie already mentioned, the R Institute, the IEL, puts on events where they're attended by arts and museum professionals, by lawyers and the like. So those are things that students can attend as well. So that's a good opportunity to be in the center of all of that action. And then, of course, you have the museums as well, and the galleries within a stone's throw of British Museum. I usually take students on a tour behind the scenes of the British Museum to look at some of the controversial objects that they have in their collection. And you have places like the John Soane Museum, which is literally on the same block as CCLS, and one of the great smaller museums of London and the UK. So you have a lot of great opportunities, a lot of access. You have great people working with you, and you get to meet a lot of wonderful students from around the world. So it's a really unique opportunity to study this developing area that has grown a lot. I mean, our institute was founded in 1995 when art law wasn't really a thing. And as it grew, so too did the field develop. So you're getting in at a really interesting time when there are a number of very engaged art lawyers, many of whom are involved in the program, and art law firms that work in this area, disputes that arise fairly regularly, as Debbie has mentioned, and you get to talk about all of these issues with your colleagues and with your instructors. So it's a really exciting time to be entering into this area, and you'll be with a really great group of people.
And I'd just like to add to Alex's comment about the seminars. I should also point out that as an LLM student at Queen Mary at the Center for Commercial Law Studies, you will be able to attend public lectures that we put on, seminars. So for example, Professor Joe Gibson has a fashion forum, and she puts on talks through the year. Our IP group put on a lot of seminars and public lectures. And Queen Mary, the larger university, does as well. And so that's available to you too. Charlotte, were you going to add something?
I just went and had a look on the CCLS events page, which I've just put in the chat. But there's a talk next week, an event on digital art, generative AI and challenges for IP law. So yeah. Very topical.
Yes, and in fact, I couldn't recall if that was, I don't have my diary with me, but yes, that's one that I had in my head too. So thank you, Charlotte. Shall we go to the Q&A? Unless Alex?
Yeah, if people have any questions, please feel free to put them in. We haven't had anything so far, so you've obviously just been very comprehensive in what you're saying, Debbie and Alex. And I've popped some links in the chat for stuff that you were talking about, just to help if people want to have any kind of follow-up.
Yes, thank you
looking
for
at
that,
anything.
Charlotte. That's
No
great.
problem at all. Yes,
Yeah,
if anyone
that's-
has any questions, feel free.
I mean, it's possible people might have questions about some of the specifics of some of the modules that Debbie mentioned. So if anyone wants to know a little bit more about how we cover, whether it's art disputes with Debbie as the convener, or art and IP, where we have Gaetano Dimita as the convener, art and governance, where Emily Gould, my colleague from the Institute, is the convener. So if anyone has any specific questions on the different modules, what they cover, any questions about what they feel might not be covered if they haven't seen it on the website or something, we're happy to talk about those areas.
Yeah. Someone's asked if there's a part-time study option.
Yes, there is. You can complete the program over a 2-year period. So what that would mean as a part-time study option is that you would take half the modules 1 year and half the modules the other year, with the dissertation option, following in that 2nd year. We've had 1 or 2 students who have done that. Currently, we've got 1 part-time student who's completing this year. It seems, Alex, my recollection is we usually have we have 1.
Yeah, it's quite rare, actually.
Quite rare. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
which is not to say, yeah, it's available. The ones who've done it, I think everyone, from my recollection, Debbie, they've been working. I mean, they've either been a lawyer, usually I think they're working in law, so they will be, full-time employed and then doing this part-time, which is a lot. That is a lot. It is quite challenging. I think that's why few people have taken that option, but it is available. And we've been able to make that work for them. And I think they've found the program very fulfilling, even though they were juggling it with their work commitments, or sometimes actually family commitments as well for some people.
Yep, so I think that certainly translates over to other programs as well. And there's kind of almost a follow-up question to that in the Q&A. So Helen's asked, she's interested to know about contact time, how many hours of seminars, lectures, because she's on a similar thing, thinking about whether to do it part-time or full-time.
Sorry, so contact time. So contact time, our modules, I don't want to get technical, but so our modules are either 30 credits, and those are 4 modules, art and IP, art transactions, art and governance, art disputes. And what that means is that for a 10-week period, we meet 3 hours a week. The lectures, it's a 3-hour lecture once a week over the semester. The semester is 11 weeks, but there's 1 study week, a week for a study week. So you've got 10 lectures, 3 hours each. For art and cultural values and art and money, they are 15 credit modules. They run 5 weeks. Art and cultural values runs mid-November, like from November after the study break, the fall study break, to Christmas, the end of term. And art and money runs, I believe, from March to the end of term, 5 weeks, and they're 3 hours a week. So 15-hour contact time for those 2, 30 hours contact time lectures for the others. Then on an ad hoc basis, conveners offer, if it's an exam module, they might offer a revision class for exam writing. I know I do for art disputes. And if it's an essay module, they might offer a revision class for essay writing, which I do for art and cultural values. So that depends on module conveners. In the past, the module conveners added a couple of seminars, just because that they wanted to cover something else, but that's unusual. It's usually revision classes. So that's the contact time, face-to-face, we're in person. Yeah.
So that, I guess, Debbie, that translates to half the time of the term you'd have 6 hours a week of lectures, and then half the time you'd have 9 hours. Is that right? Because you have that 15 credit one.
Yeah, and then you need to factor in your dissertation, which you'll start thinking about proposals in November, December. And then you'll be starting with supervisory meetings, 3 supervisory meetings, because that dissertation will be due in August. So you'll be, in an ideal world, you are working on your dissertation as well. So
And it's funny.
It's a full,
Yeah.
it's a full year program. It's an, yeah.
And even like just the technical numbers of contact hours, I always find that we're seeing so much of the students, aren't we, Debbie? Like above and beyond that, talking to them after class, meeting with them separately, maybe seeing them outside of CCLS as well. So it's kind of, there's the kind of added bonus side of what's offered in the program as well.
Absolutely. And as directors of the program, Alex and I are available, to speak to you if you've got it
24/7.
24/7.
But don't quote us on that.
You'll have access to your course conveners, who, there'll be office hours, but also you can shoot them an email. The course conveners are fantastic on this course. They really care about their students. So you've got course conveners looking after the modules. You've got us as the program directors in the event that there's something that needs to be accessed program-wise. There's then the LLM support office, for all our LLM students and for you. Then there's the QM UL support network. So there's a lot of that, but it's a small program. Getting back to ABL, it's a small program. We know everybody.
Yeah, I think Debbie, there was a question in the chat about what the cohort size usually is, and I think we can say it's usually between 15 and 20 students. Yeah. That's kind of been the average going back to the beginning, actually.
Yeah.
There's another question here, Debbie. You'd be the one to answer this. Are there doctoral opportunities?
Yeah, doctoral opportunities, there are always doctoral opportunities. We're not, we're always keen to have good PhD candidates apply to us. I'm very keen about it. It's a matter of, what's your interest? Is there a project here? There's obviously an application process that you must go through. There are some of us on faculty who are very keen on cultural property issues. Depends on your slant in terms of where a supervisor would fit in, whether it's an IP, like I have right now, a student who is looking at Scottish indigeneity and the protection of Scottish heritage. Kind of falling under the umbrella of IP because she's looking at IP protections. But it's an empirical study, which is something that I'm quite interested in. Yes, there are doctoral opportunities, and this is something that we can talk about through the year in terms of developing a proposal, developing a research plan, and learning what a PhD is all about. So it isn't connected per se to the program. So I don't want you to think that it's connected to the program. It's a standalone opportunity that we have do accept PhD candidates, but they have to go through the whole rigmarole of the application process, because we need to ensure that there is a viable research project and a supervisor who has that expertise in the area.
That's great. Debbie, there's a question about kind of the timing of seminars. And Morwena's asking about whether there's an evening option for seminars. I think I can maybe take a crack at that one, because I would say you can't count on that, because timetabling at universities, anyone who knows a thing or two about them, it's a thing of some organized chaos where you don't necessarily know exactly when the time slots are going to be. We've played around with that in the past with this particular module, just because of the the demands on some of the teaching staff who are professional barristers or judges, whatever it might be. But I don't think you can reliably say that these are going to be evening module, if you have a full-time job, for example, or if there's something with the, availability or accessibility. So I think that, unfortunately, that's not something we can guarantee. Debbie, no. I don't know if there's anything else.
And I don't want you to have the impression that it can happen. For example, this year, it did not happen.
Because we've had morning, afternoon.
We've had mornings after like 9 o'clock in the morning. We've had 12, we've had 3, and none in the evening. As Alex said, initially it started that they'd be in the late afternoon, but that hasn't been the case in the last 2-3 years. So, I don't want to burst a bubble, but I'm probably going to be a little harder than Alex's diplomacy. Sorry. Very Canadian.
Well, we want to manage expectation just so no one gets the wrong impression. But that's
and it's only actually, because I know the admin team, and they would not be happy if we made promises that they could not keep.
No, because we have to fit in with a number of other LLMs. People have to realize this, and there are high demands for that space because it's a relatively limited space, and so we have to share it with other people, which of course we like to do. And also, actually, just one thing to add on that, we found early on, as Debbie said, we did do more evening classes, and they were actually quite hard. Like you're quite tired by the time especially if you spent the whole day in the library, by the time you get to sort of 6 or 7 o'clock at night, because we had there was one slot used to be 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Awesome. And that was pretty difficult for students and for instructors. So there are benefits to having a more varied schedule when it comes to.
I actually don't like teaching in the evening, and I request that. You lose students, you lose me. You don't want to lose Debbie. That's one thing you need to know going into this program.
Debbie, another question. Martina asks, can we choose additional modules? So what happens? Debbie mentioned the 6 core modules that we have for this program. So she's gone through those. We cover basically everything you need to know about art law in those 6 modules. But what happens if a student wants to take another module? Are there options for them?
Not for credit purposes. There might be an opportunity for auditing another module. So maybe there might be a module in media and communications that you might want to audit, or in IP, one of Gaetano's video games or course. So
Joe Gibson, you mentioned on fashion, film. She's very interested in a lot of the creative industries. So that's a logical connection there too.
Exactly. And so what normally happens with auditing, it all depends on the numbers, and it's up to a convener. So you have to speak to the convener, and the convener needs to give approval. And it really comes down to numbers in the class and the physical space, or whether the module is capped. So I run a negotiation module, and it's capped, and I've had to turn down auditors. But on my ADR module, it's not capped, and I invite auditors, and so it just depends.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we can say about having these 6 core modules, where you're, in a sense, you're restricted to those 6 core modules, it does help to build a rapport within the program and amongst the students, because you really get to know everyone else who's on the program. You get to know the different instructors who sometimes teach across different modules as well. And as I said, it's a comprehensive study and investigation of all the legal issues that affect the art world, whether it's the art market, whether it's the museum sector, whether it's import, export, whether it's IP, whatever it is, you're going to get all of the knowledge and information that you need across those 6 modules. So there is a reason why we have it set up this way. And I think if you do take the program and you follow it to its completion, you'll see that it is of great benefit.
And you might think actually that you're thinking, oh, you know what, 6 hours, 9 hours, that's not a lot of contact time. I think our students find that it's full on, particularly if you do take advantage of some of the other opportunities that we offer. We also have a careers department where they offer up a lot of events to assist with building career opportunities. So the mentoring program, we have Q Legal, which is a legal clinic, not specifically art-based, but it does deal with some creative industries. It can, and some of our students participate in that, and that takes up some time. So just there's a lot to fill up your time, just in case you think you needed to fill in with other modules.
There's another question about how the assessments are done. So Melanie is writing that she did I think a master's in law, but didn't have any exams. Well, this is going to be a little bit different from that, because there will be exams in some of the modules, and then other modules will have written assignments. And so you have to keep in mind that there will be that kind of mix of the two. It's usually roughly about half and half, I think, Debbie. Sometimes it changes a little bit. Or is it one, or there are only a couple that have the exams?
2 exams.
Is it 2? Okay. So 2 and then four are assignments.
That's right. And there are also 2 modules or 3 modules, 2 modules that have oral presentations as part of the assessment, which take place in class. And that's group work.
And then Hetal has asked a question about the assumed level of knowledge other than legal background and an interest in art. And maybe that's a platform for us to talk a little bit about sort of where people are coming from when they enter this program. You'll have obviously many with a legal background, as in they'll have studied law, they'll have done a conversion course, they might be practicing lawyers in their jurisdiction. And then you'll have others who might have just come out of their education process, so they'll just have a law degree. And then, as some of you know, there is a way to be admitted into this program if you have professional experience of at least 5 years at a high level that has a legal element, even if you don't necessarily have formal legal training. So an example of that would be working in the art market, let's say being the director of a commercial art gallery and negotiating artist contracts and negotiating acquisition agreements with collectors and so on. So there'd be an obvious legal element because you're dealing with contracts, for example, you're dealing with artist rights, but you don't necessarily have the formal legal, you don't have a law degree. So there is that possibility. So there are some people who come into this without the legal training, the formal legal training. Most of the people, I think it's fair to say, after having done this for 7 years, most of the people who come on will have legal training. They will have, it might not be from a common law jurisdiction, but they will have that legal training as at a minimum. But there still are some, and they become very good LLM students who don't have that formal legal background. So I think that's one side of things. Debbie, did you want to add anything on that?
No, I think that was comprehensive. Thank you.
I guess there is one thing that just comes to mind is about people coming from a non-common law jurisdiction. So there are many who've been on this program from continental Europe, from Asia, from the Caribbean, from South America, where they don't have that basic understanding of the common law system that operates in England, Wales, most of Canada, US, India, etc. And it's important to realize that going in, and there are options that are provided by CCLS and Queen Mary so that you can get a basic teaching in the common law, which is highly recommended. I think that's in the first week or two, or might be in the induction week. It's early on, so you really have to catch it when you can. And that helps you kind of get up to that level so you have the basic understanding of how the common law system works.
Yes, that's during the induction period. We have a 2-week induction period. And there's, I believe, a seminar on civil law traditions and the common law traditions. And for those of you who are coming into the program, please do look for that, because I think it's in the first week. I can't be sure. I don't think I've seen a full timetable yet.
There's a question from Vahide, and apologies if I've mispronounced your name. And they've asked about whether there is a kind of a global scope to this program, or is it just limited to practice within the UK? And I think it's fair to say, based on what Debbie said and what I've said, is that this is ultimately, it's a global program, because we get students from all over the world. The art world itself is inherently international, because paintings, works of art are bought and sold in multiple jurisdictions. So you have to have a good understanding of what the differences in different jurisdictions might be when it comes to the trade in art, or the protection of heritage, or the protection of intellectual property. So there is a fairly strong comparative element and an international element to the program as a whole. So I think it would equip you well, even if your goal is not to become a practitioner in the UK or even in another common law jurisdiction. Would that be fair to say, Debbie?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, well, I think we might have caught all of the questions in the chat. Does anyone have anything else that they'd like to add in the Q&A or in the chat? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I think there's one we might have missed about, Emma asked about Boodle and Hatfield, and if there's any other law firms that we have connections with at all, specific art law practice.
Yeah, there are. I mean, there are a number of art law firms around London. I mean, a Google search can reveal what they are. And we have good relations. I mean, Boodle Hatfield has been a great supporter, as Debbie said, almost from the beginning of the program. So they're tops in terms of art law practitioners in London. And so they're the ones that, we've done the most with for this program.
Perfect. Oh, deadline to apply. That's a good one. I can help with that. The deadline to make an application for this September is the end of August, but we always encourage you to apply as early as possible, and particularly if you're coming internationally and there might be visas or anything that you might need to have processes for. The earlier you apply, the better, but obviously, if you're looking at next year, potentially then applications reopen in September for the following year. But there's still time for this year. Adele's asking about part-time, which I can try and cover quickly because we have touched on it slightly. Just to say, which I think we might, where people get confused a little bit about full-time and part-time, and this is the same across all of the Queen Mary programs, is that the part-time offering that we offer at CCLS isn't an evening or weekend kind of part-time option. It's the same as the full-time. You're doing the same content but in half the time, or in double the time. So what a full-time student would do, you'll do half of that in 1 year and then the other half in the second year. So you would be in a lecture in your first year with other full-time students. You're not just going to be with your part-time colleagues, because they'll also be doing the module in 1 year, whereas you're doing it in 2 years. So that's why we don't have evenings or weekend teaching very often, because we still need to fit the full-time students in it. So it's just an extended length of time that you're completing the LLM. So I hope that helps. That's the bit people always get confused about part-time. Sadly, we can't be as flexible when it comes to part-time, just because our academics are very busy. We also like to give them a break as well. A couple of admissions questions. letters of recommendations mandatory. Whatever it says in the application form is what we're looking for. So a reference and your statement of purpose is what we're looking for in your application. But everything is guided for you, and you can apply via the website. References, I think they ask for at least one, if not two, if you've got just an academic one, I think. But it'll all explain to you on the website.
Oh yeah, and Charlotte, I see there's a question that's just come up in the chat, and it is something we haven't mentioned this yet. About
yes.
scholarships. Yeah, and there is one scholarship specific to the Art, Business, and Law program, which I'd highly recommend people to apply for. It's the Norman E. Palmer Scholarship, and it covers 1/3 of the tuition costs, and it's in honor of Norman Palmer, who was the great barrister who I mentioned earlier, who passed away in 2016 before this program could officially launch, but was very instrumental in setting the groundwork for it. So in his honor and his memory, we've created the Norman Palmer Scholarship. So that's a really good one. And there have been some great candidates over the years who've been recipients of that particular scholarship. But there are other scholarships as well, which maybe Charlotte or Debbie can talk to.
Charlotte, do you want to mention there's some for CCLS? I don't know if the deadlines might be.
Yeah, so for this year, the majority of the deadlines have passed. They're usually in kind of May time they usually close, but for those of you that might be looking for next year as well, these will come up again and you'll be able to have a look. There's a variety of scholarships. I'll pop a link in the chat, which is the Queen Mary Scholarships database, which I always recommend having a look at. Just so you can filter it by law, you can filter it also by the country that you're from in case there's something that's more general that you can apply to. It's always worth having a look to see if there's any funding opportunities that might be available to you.
And for those of you who are in the EU generally has good funding opportunities.
Yes.
Is no longer in the EU, but you might, and your country of origin might have their own scholarships. So do take a look at that.
Absolutely.
Even if it's for residents, for example, right? That you get you're able to get residents paid. I'm thinking Good Enough College I think that there's that's for Commonwealth, that you might be able to get some.
Yeah, we have a lot of quite a few Chevening scholars each year, so so definitely worth having a look at to see if there's any options available. Okay, looks like we've got through all the questions, which is great. So we can close off there, I think, if we're happy to. Give me a nod, Debbie, Alex. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you everyone for joining us today, for this morning for me and afternoon for you, or evening for you. We hope to see you at CCLS in our ABL program, either in September or next September. Alex, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, we look forward to meeting many of you soon. And good luck with the applications and anything else that comes between now and when the program starts.
Lovely. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for your time as well. Have a lovely day, everyone. Bye-bye.